Konnichiwa.
Welcome to the Jandals in Japan podcast.
Kia ora, Catherine.
Konnichiwa, Jane.
明けましておめでとうございます。
新年おめでとうございます。
今年もよろしくお願いします。
こちらこそよろしくお願いします。Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. And I think we can probably stop saying that soon.
Soon,
I did
right?
say it today to someone and I was like, wow, are we still saying this? And they're like, yeah, we're still saying this. But you got to do the rounds. You got to have your first greeting of the new year.
Yeah, even if it's just a little bit further into the middle of the month, you still want to say it to somebody you haven't seen yet.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Especially if they're a お世話になってる person, someone who, you know, looks after you kind of thing. Right? Yeah.
I always find too, between Christmas and New Year, when I was back in New Zealand, people start saying Happy New Year. So you actually say Happy New Year for quite a long time in New Zealand. After Christmas, everyone starts saying, well, you know, Happy New Year isn't kind of aisatsu, a greeting at the end of something, or you're having, you know, buying shopping at the supermarket. Someone say,
like Yoyo Toshio?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's that, I guess you say it in Japanese too, don't you? Have a good New Year.
Have a good New Year.
Have a good New Year. Yeah.
Anyway, Happy New Year, everyone. Well, here we are in 2024. Did you get your first prayer in of the year, Catherine?
Oh, yes. The Hatsumode, you mean?
Hatsumode, yes.
Yeah, normally I would go to a shrine, but this year I went to a temple, one of the really big temples near Tokyo Tower. Yeah, and it was really amazing because here's the little thing I picked up, you know, the good luck charm. But the thing was, I realized when I was there, it was the first temple I ever went to when I arrived in Japan. So kind of 20 years in between. And I think I'd visited maybe once, but to actually just go there, one of my friends invited me to go to option A or option B, and I chose option B, which was the temple. And it was awesome to be back there and think about, gosh, 21 years in Japan, and thank you very much, because I literally arrived, stayed at a hotel nearby, and the first thing I did when I walked out of the door of the hotel was see this temple and went there. So it was super exciting, to be back in the same place.
What a wonderful...
It was amazing.
Not coming of age, but sort of the way things have come around again, and you could go there and because that's an important thing to do, is to give thanks for all of the wishes that have come true, blessings you have received.
So true.
So you were able to do that.
I did that, and also we did the, what do you call it?
Omikuji?
Omikuji, yes, where you select
the fortune.
Your fortune, and I got the Daikichi, which is the very best luck one. Right. So it was awesome. Yeah. Excellent. So I felt, after what we had a bit of a disruption at the very, very beginning of the year, with a bit of a rough time in Japan with the earthquake and the accident at Haneda, it was really kind of refreshing and bringing a bit more soul back to people who were there. All seemed to be trying to enjoy and get into a bit of a spirit, right? And pray for something better to happen this year. And did you do something? Yeah.
I did. I also went to do Hatsumode on the 1st of January, which is supposedly the most powerful day to put your wish in, right? And some people are even waiting at the gates of the temple or the shrine at midnight so that they can be first in line to make their wish. Yeah. Wow. Have you ever done that? Waited outside the temple until midnight?
I don't think I have. No, I think I have.
For the youngins, I think.
Yeah, for the youngins. Yeah. I have been there and sort of got through the gate after probably 20, 30, 40 people have been in, but never first.
Oh, no, never first. No, good luck with that. But being in the first sort of wave of, you know, the hordes that come to do their Hatsumode. But we went to our local onsen jinja, which is my favorite shrine here in Iwaki, in Yumoto Onsen. And we had to wait, which is an unusual experience because usually there's not really that many people making wishes at this particular shrine. It's very quiet normally. And my kids were like, what's going on? Why do we have to wait? And I'm like, because it's New Year and everyone wants to make a wish on New Year's Day. Yeah. And it wasn't that long. It was only 5 minutes and there was, you know, single file line waiting. And then I saw some photos of Narita-san, or a friend of shared that she went to Narita-san, and just the hordes of people at Narita-san wanting to make a wish on that day were just amazing. So
amazing.
We did not wait long.
But
And then we got
so controlled, so
free soup
controlled. Free
and
soup. Ooh,
snacks.
ooh,
Yeah,
very
so it was like,
nice.
oh, well, it's lovely. It was a lovely event. We got to sit around the fire and drink soup and keep warm and enjoy being at the shrine on New Year's Day. And
That's
this was
right.
before the earthquake had happened, so
Ah, I see.
it was still a very sort of festive atmosphere.
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Until we got home and things, yeah, went a bit
Yeah,
sideways
wasn't
after that.
good.
Mm.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting. There's so many people at these places, and where I was also crowded, but not as crowded as the Narita-san place you mentioned.
Mm.
But just how everyone conducts themselves
Yeah.
so quietly and reverently. It's
Yeah, no
really
pushing,
amazing. And another
shoving.
thing, it just
Mm.
makes me think about Japan and how wonderful it is, where people, it's going to be crowded, but everyone just takes it in their stride. It's
Waits their
really
turn.
incredible.
Well, so you should too,
So
right? You're going to meet the kami-sama, right? You can hardly force your way to the front of the line and be like, I
I
want
want.
this year.
Yeah, it's not going to
Thanks,
work, is
God.
it?
Not going to work. All
Well,
right.
speaking
Yeah.
of wants, right? We
Mm.
also do want some of that sweet stuff, and we've got sweet stuff coming today on this episode because it's all about cookie time. Cookie time, you're thinking we have had cookie time before. If you know, we have actually on
Mm.
episode 5 back in 2022, we had
Mm.
Jason Allen come on the show. But we've got him back again. He's been bringing smiles to Japan along with his team for a very long time. That's one of their slogans. That's why I slipped that in.
Mm. Mm.
But this beloved brand of New Zealand for more than 40 years is back on the show because they've been having wonderful, wonderful opportunities with Costco. And we wanted to share this story because it's super amazing. You will get so much juice out of this
Mm.
episode. Jason is just brilliant the way he tells the journey and all the opportunities
Yeah.
that came up.
Can I just make a cheeky little content warning? As in, if you listen to this episode, you're gonna want to eat some cookie time cookies. So if you're on like a diet or your New Year's
Mm.
resolution is to eat healthier, just beware. All right, do not listen on an empty stomach. All right, it's not a good idea. You
Excellent,
will
Jane. I knew you'd
eat some
come through
cookies.
with some, a New Year's tie-in there to what we were talking about before. Good one.
But I have eaten
Absolutely.
so many cookie time cookies while I've been working on this episode. So, yeah, because yeah, it
Absolutely.
makes me want to eat them. Mm.
Yeah, go for it, everybody, especially those who are not on a diet and not doing anything resolution-wise for this year. So go,
Mm.
enjoy.
Yeah, enjoy this episode with Jason. Kia ora, Jason. Welcome back to the Jandals in Japan podcast. Great to see you again.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back. And yeah, good to be chatting again.
All right, so our warm-up question. Last time you were a guest on the show, we asked you if you were a bed person or a futon person. Today, our warm-up question for you is, we're in Harajuku and we're feeling a bit peckish, so we head to the Cookie Time store. What should we order from the menu?
Well, are you a shake person or are you coffee?
I
You
love
can
a
have a you can
coffee.
you love a coffee. Okay, well, we do
Mm.
have a good coffee machine, and good beans. So you could have a nice long black, or a flat white. You could also enjoy your coffee in a shake. So you don't just need to be a coffee person. You could have an espresso cookie shake. They're very good.
Oh, wow, that sounds amazing.
But
Catherine,
I also
yeah,
recommend you get a cookie from the warmer because the hot cookies are truly very good.
yeah, they are. They're amazing,
And
aren't
my
they?
favorite would have to be the triple chocolate. I'm not sure if you've had it.
I
It's
think
very
so.
good.
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's very good. The chocolate chunk is the one that most gravitate to because that's his favorite. But the triple chocolate's amazing. Like the texture, it goes a little bit crunchy on the outside, but soft and gooey in the middle.
Stop.
Stop.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
really
what
good.
I'm doing today.
Oh my goodness. Catherine,
Wow.
what will you have if you're
Oh,
heading to Cookie
well, it's a
Time in
bit
Harajuku?
indulgent, but I do like the no-bake cookie dough.
Yeah.
Because that was not in stock for a while. It's back now, right? It's just one of those ones where you're going to be naughty, but it's just so good, right?
Yeah, it
And
is.
I
Yeah.
remember going and buying it, sitting out on the bus stop outside your place, cookie time, and just sitting there and going, and just
Yeah.
taking it
Yeah.
all. Yeah, it was just so good. And I thought, oh my God, I shouldn't have had that, but oh, that was so good. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I love the no bake cookie dough. I'm so glad to hear it's coming back. Yay.
Yeah, it's wildly good. I'm not sure if I told you the story, but when after COVID we rebooted, and we kind of had the management team down there 1 day a week, and I was on a shift as well, and then it got to like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, need something sweet, and so I have a mini cookie, whatever. But then I started to have the edible dough, and you're right, it's like incredibly addictive. And when you get to three, and you do need a hit of something, like nothing. Once you've had edible dough, nothing replaces it.
There you go. There you go
Yeah,
with the dough. All right.
there you
Well,
go.
Jane, what's yours?
Well, I like that. If it was a bit hot, maybe I'd go for the espresso cookie shake thing that Jason
Yeah.
mentioned. And if it was a bit cooler, then I would probably have a nice hot flat white, since
Mm,
there are no flat whites where I live,
mm.
here in Fukushima. So, not in Fukushima, where I live in Fukushima, there are no
Yes.
flat whites. So,
Oh, okay.
yes. Mm.
I
Sounds
mean,
like a
sorry, I
business
share one
opportunity.
more thing too.
Yes.
If you're in there, there's a banoffee cookie. It's a banana and toffee cookie.
Mm.
And it's
Wow.
amazing when you have cream on top. So it's a bit like a banoffee pie. So yeah, you can ask the girls for cream. So just the banoffee cookie, and then they like do like swirl of cream on top. It's
Wow.
really good.
Oh, insider information there.
Yeah.
Thank
Fantastic.
you. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, welcome back, Jason. You were on the
Okay.
show in May 2022, episode
Yep.
5 of the Jandals in Japan podcast.
Mm,
You've been one of the most talked about episodes, would you believe?
mm. That's
Well,
great news.
yeah, I think
Mm.
it's your long term in Japan, your wealth of knowledge and experience. It's been super helpful for our listeners. And there's been so much happening with you and Cookie Time since we last talked. And for anyone who's listening, who's this Jason guy, please go back to episode 5 of Jandals in Japan and have a listen before you continue to listen to this one today. But the link will be in the show notes. Welcome back, Jason, since you were on the podcast. Have you had any fans come up to you? Anybody from who were listening
Yeah.
and said, "Hey, we heard you," or "Yeah, I heard you on the podcast"? Please tell
Yes, I
us.
sure have.
Please tell us
So
yes.
yes,
Great.
you have. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you've obviously, as the Jandals group is growing, it sounds. The fan
Yeah.
club, probably 3 or 4 different people have mentioned they heard the podcast. So I have met a few people too, like that have reached out, perhaps off the back of the podcast too. So yeah, always happy to talk about our experience, my experience and our experience in Japan.
Well, thank you for doing that, because that's what part of this is about, is that people hear you and then want to be able to follow up on something you said that just is something that they need a little bit of help with to do their successful business in Japan too. So thank you for that. When we last talked, we were hearing about your success going into Lawson's, selling your cookies there, and I've seen you also say Joishi. I can pick up your cookies there too now, but
Mm.
we just sort of thought that's probably as high as you can go. But then you landed Costco, and we've just blown away by that. And so we wanted to hear this time about your journey to getting Costco contract, and there's such an iconic mega store. So tell us a little bit about that, how that came about.
To be honest, years ago we reached out to Costco here in Japan, so maybe 6, 7 years ago, and they have very strict regulations on licensing required, manufacturing licensing. And whilst we have HACCP and run RMPs back in New Zealand to meet all those regulations, we didn't have at the time the global credentials to actually supply Costco. But we had some good conversations with their buyers at the time. It was really actually Costco arriving to New Zealand that was a catalyst for a bunch of different things. That is, getting our bakery spec to international audit standards. It actually probably was, let's be honest, but every audit is a little bit different. So we had to introduce a new global audit standard. Then that process had to run through, so that took time. But again, the biggest catalyst was Costco arriving to New Zealand, because as a iconic New Zealand brand, a manufacturer and brand, it was fairly obvious that there was a big opportunity there for us, and that actually Costco wanted us as well in New Zealand. So yeah, we developed our team in New Zealand actually drove the product development for a Costco pack, or what that might look like. And so that was really helpful. And then when it launched in New Zealand, obviously it was very successful. And then it very quickly transitioned to a conversation about the Australian market, Costco in Australia. of which there are, I think, maybe 20. So obviously much bigger than the one in New Zealand. So that kind of gives you an indication of, this obviously the scaling opportunity within the Costco group, just within Australasia. And then, obviously the next conversation to have was with Japan. And given that we'd already had contacts with them, and also, the fact that internally they are very connected, well connected internally, I think, the Costco groups or the buyers across the countries. And they just so happened to have an annual conference in the US, and the Japan buyer had been over there, and the New Zealand and the Australian buyer had been, talking up the launch of the Cookie Time product in the New Zealand store, but also in Australia. So all of those sound bites helped, I think, back up, our story or our sales pitch when we went back to Costco here in Japan. That's kind of a very simple flow of how we ended up discussing with buyers with Costco in Japan. And then it came back down to price. They're very tough negotiators on that particular point, but things were happening on our side too that meant whilst we were actually looking for the volume, and whilst the margin's not always there, we definitely wanted the volume, so we did the deal.
Wow. So 6 to 7 years to actually being in Japanese Costco stores, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
What a
that's when we
journey.
started
Yeah.
negotiations. And during that process too, we had New Zealand Trade and Enterprise on our behalf to step in, help with some of those conversations, bridging those conversations. But ultimately, it was a licensing issue at the beginning. So we ticked that box. And then, to be honest, when we were pitching them as Cookie Time Japan, they felt that there was also a layer of friction there. Costco, they want to do direct. They don't want to put anything in the middle. And so even a 100% owned, subsidiary of Cookie Time, as in ourselves in Japan, felt like that was almost a layer of friction too. So when we went back to them, obviously I was involved in those conversations, but it was actually on basically myself and our team on behalf of Cookie Time in New Zealand, not Japan. So I think that was really critical to getting the business done as well, in hindsight.
Right. So you were speaking from a New Zealand perspective, right?
Yeah,
Is that right? Yeah.
essentially acting as a salesperson for Cookie Time New Zealand. They want to just do X Works business, and that is X our factory. So basically negotiating on behalf of Cookie Time New Zealand for the business.
Great.
So is that industry speak? I'm having trouble following. What does that mean when you say?
So X Works.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So terms of trade. So a lot of, I think, global big box kind of retailers will deal, if they're importing product, will deal in X Works. It basically just means that you sell them the product X your factory. So
Direct from the factory to
yeah,
them.
yeah.
Right.
And
Okay. Yeah.
they step in with their logistics provider and arrange the logistics from your factory gate, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
So
and
you
then
don't
there
have
are
to get it somewhere. They
no,
pick it
yeah,
up
you
from
don't.
you.
Yeah. And of course there are
Yeah.
different other ways to structure the trade. People listening will know CIF and CNF. That means maybe we might be responsible for the freight.
Yeah.
But of course, depending on how the business is put together, that's the pricing too. So our model with Costco was X Works, net, net, net. So no deductions, no nothing. It's very clean. But with terms of trade, you can get into all sorts of different,
Different
models.
varieties,
Yeah,
right? It's
different
all
models.
under
Yeah.
Incoterms is the big thing,
Yeah.
isn't it, right? So Incoterms is a whole list of these three-lettered, or
There
as
you
you
go.
said, X Works,
That's
and
it.
they are the
Yes, yeah.
terms of trade, export, import that you pop into contracts,
That's
right?
it.
For
Yeah.
who's paying for, as you said, freight, when does actual ownership pass, all these sorts of things, right? That are all
Yes.
connected. So does X Works in this case mean Costco pick it up from New Zealand factory, perhaps Christchurch, and
That's
bring
right.
it to Japan?
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think actually our terms of trade at the moment might be FOB, which is freight on board. Well, it's very similar to X Works, but actually the shipping of the container to, in our case, Littleton Port, is covered by us. But everything from then on is covered by Costco, and that's kind of billed through their preferred logistics partner. So in New Zealand, our bakery team, production team, and then we have a logistics team. our logistics team will liaise with their logistics team or their preferred logistics partner to coordinate the details around the container, arriving at our site for being stacked and packed, and then leaving our site and arriving to port and that flow.
Wow.
Is
Yeah.
that a good deal for you guys? Like, is this a preferable way to do the business? As in, like, you want them to take over the logistics as soon as possible, kind of thing, rather than it
Yeah.
being on
So
you to get the product to market?
there are, there are a few things. So our business is done in New Zealand dollars too. So that was preferable because, of course, if it's done in another currency, we're exposed to that exchange rate risk. Costco's global kind of reach and power and network, it kind of on paper does make sense that they would handle that logistics piece. You would expect that, across all the countries and markets, they have a very fluid, slim, model for moving product around. So, I think once we did at the beginning, we did quote. I think they also like, manufacturers or exporters to quote too, because they just need to feel out the current market situation. Maybe they don't want to be locked into one preferred logistic provider and then have that provider kind of slowly increase margin on them. So they did ask us for CIF pricing too, perhaps just for comparison purposes. But at the end of the day, the business got done, Xworks using their preferred logistics partner.
Wow, amazing. We heard through stuff reporting that you had like 40-foot containers, 80 pallets of product that came into Japan in this first loading. Was that right? Middle of December 2022?
Yeah, that was the test launch. 40-foot container is 40 pallets. So that's 20 pallets in a layer. So we double stack them. So you
How
got
many
40.
cookies is that?
It's a lot of cookies. So on a pallet, there's 168 1 kilogram packs. So in a container, you've got 268,800 cookies
Ooh,
individually wrapped.
nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of cookies. So yeah, the December production was a kind of a test, and it went very well. It was about March, April that we then had, regular containers flowing
Right.
X Works or X Bakery into Japan. Yeah, at its peak, we were doing like a container a week. It's pulled back a little bit now, but the business is still really strong and big future, which I can go into more detail.
Amazing. What was it like on opening day? I heard things sold out very quickly. It was like a rampage.
Yeah,
Tell us
yeah.
about that first day. How exciting it must have been.
Internally, we were celebrating, of course, and we did very quickly venture to some of the warehouses to check stock. But yeah, it
It was a
was
work day. Busy
yeah,
day.
it
Yeah.
was it did move very quickly. And I think some warehouses more quickly than others. Of course, some of the Costco warehouses perform stronger than others. So I think those warehouses in Kanto, like Kawasaki and Misato, and yeah, some of those warehouses move very quickly.
Yeah, Misato
Kisarazu,
is heaving with people
yeah,
on a
yeah,
weekend day, but the same in Hitachinaka, which is a bit further up north, not the same level of crush that you just get. And it's
yeah.
amazing the
So
difference. Yeah.
yeah, and so we didn't know that at the beginning, obviously, but through the demonstration we've been running demos. Through that process, we've come to understand a bit more about the locations and the individual warehouses, and just how they tick. They're all a little bit different. Yeah.
Well, tell us about that demo process because I guess it's a little bit different to standing in a supermarket saying, New Zealand cookie, kaga desu ka?
Mm.
How about a New Zealand cookie? It's like, what do you do? What's a demo look like?
Obviously, Costco are big on this because when you go in there, it's a bit like the Disneyland, and on every single corner there's somebody kind of peddling something. And it's definitely part of their model. So again, just going back to the terms of trade, whilst our everything I mentioned was Xworks and net, it did turn out that you do kind of need to factor in a marketing budget. That wasn't explicit at the beginning. It just so happened through the way that we dealt with them, we were able to kind of flush that out, and that we did have that kind of a little bit portioned aside. So it was very helpful when we got further down, the discussion, or further through the dialogue around, what activity that we would do, or that we would cooperate with them to help, increase exposure of the brand and sampling, etc. So again, a critical point, I think, is in your pricing to factor that in.
Right. So you mean that it wasn't explicit in the contract, but it was actually an assumption that you would be contributing to the costs of the marketing.
Yeah,
But
pretty much. Yeah,
right. That's
yeah,
important to know, right? Because that's obviously another line item on all of the things that you're thinking about as you cost out how much it's going to be to come into country, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. But the demos are they're very slickly run through a company called CDS, which is almost feels like an internal appendage of Costco, although I think it's independent, but I don't know. I'm sure there's cross shareholding or something going on, because it's a very lucrative business in itself. And so you kind of deal through CDS to arrange demos and promotional activity on the floor in Costco. Yeah, and they've got a website portal, very easy to get enrolled. Well, your paperwork, but once you're in, it's very easy to set up demos. And then, it's user pay system, of course. And of course, when you're demoing through 33 warehouses, it's the cost times 33. So it's significant. Very kind of kit set style setup and execution. So little kind of stand thing on wheels, they roll out. It's stainless steel, I think, from memory. You can allow spots of branding, or you can fully brand as too, I believe. We have not done that yet, but you can go through that process. And other big brands have done that. I've seen visuals of that. So so that's the kind of next steps with us. But we have run a few demos with them now, using their kind of kit set rollout. And typically you get people who are, they love what they do, and they're very good at it, and they're great at communicating with customer, and they're very good at delivering the samples and the message, and they stay on message, and you help set those messages up too, and give them some parameters and kind of bit of structure. And then they pick it up and run with it. And then
Wow.
typically
Yeah.
from a demo, you might get, say, 2 to 3x sales. So on any given day when you're selling in Costco without any activity, when you are doing demo or some sort of activity, you can expect, say, 2 to 3x of sales on that particular day. And then, of course, you've been sampling. And so the idea is that you're bringing kind of more consumers into your ecosystem, and that over time, sales and run rates pick up.
Catherine, have you ever been to Costco in Japan?
I confess, no. Did you
Oh,
have to be
okay.
a member?
Yeah, well, or be friends with a member. But yeah, I have
Right.
a membership, so I do go, but there's not one nearby, so I don't go often. But it's part of the fun of going to Costco is like, what free samples
Yeah,
are they going to have today? So it's a
yeah.
very important part of the experience of going to Costco. And the samples are generally very nicely presented, delicious. People are lining up for these samples, right? So
Yes.
you have to be doing this, I think, if you want your product to stand out in that warehouse, which is just overflowing with
Yes.
amazing opportunities, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Yes. And, I think there are times during the relationship with Costco too, where you might be slightly overstocked. And in which case, you work with them to kind of move some stock. And so that would be a demo, or that might be end of aisle, or that might be some sort of coupon promotion that they do. There's a whole bunch of different ways. But again, having a pool of money set aside to participate in that, because it's kind of feels like it's part of the rules of the game, is kind of critical to doing business with Costco. Yeah.
My
Wow,
goodness, these
amazing.
unwritten rules of the game for doing
Yeah.
business with Costco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, any surprising or interesting stories that have come up while you've been dealing with Costco that you can share?
As you mentioned, Kath, the sales were really strong. And so we would get these weekly updates, or we would poke for a weekly update, normally on a Friday. And that was often the days that purchase orders arrived too. We had this Friday fever thing for a while where we get purchase orders on Friday, and then we'd get a soundbite around sales. But no, the buyer in the early days described sales like evaporating. So that was really cool. That was the first time I've ever heard somebody describe, sales like evaporating, but their sales velocity is very strong. Like they move a lot of product. And so when your brand or your product is also popular amongst their kind of system, that equals sales like evaporating. It was crazy. So yeah, we had some neat stories. And now we're kind of we're only kind of maybe a year in, or not quite a year, but we're certainly entering a more mature stage of our relationship. It's ongoing discussions around demos and promotion, and stock levels, and also early in the new year, actually, or mid new year, perhaps in Japan, we are transitioning them to a new pack as well. So it's actually slightly bigger again. And that pack is actually not been driven necessarily by Japan. This is actually what they call a Costco APAC thing, which is the Asia Pacific region, and it's generally run out of Australia. And it basically involves the Australian key buyer, I believe, coordinating the other markets in APAC and aligning on one product. And so at the moment, for example, in New Zealand, we have a 1.2 triple pouch pack. In Australia, we've got a 1.2. In Taiwan, we've got a 1 kilogram. In China, we've got a 1 kilogram and a 1.2. In Korea, we've got a 1.2. So it's getting smart around the SKU, consolidating everything into one simple product that goes across all APACs and Costco. And so obviously Japan is part of that too. So they've been kind of wrapped up in that discussion, and so they'll enter a transition period next year, middle of next year.
This must have changed everything for you, this Costco experience, that it's really, and you've got different, like you've got to keep the store going in Harajuku and keep the regulars going in there. You've got your online, right? This convenience stores and other stores, but then Costco. So
yeah,
how
so
are you managing all of that? There must be
again,
incredible to keep it hands-on.
Yeah, the deal with Costco Japan was done work via New Zealand. So obviously we've got significant resource in New Zealand. So about a year ago, I started to work more closely with our New Zealand team, or our export team, because prior to launching in Costco, we had an export-led strategy, and I was part of that.
Right.
So, but that was kind of working on behalf of the New Zealand business. So obviously in New Zealand, we've got significantly more resources. But yeah, it's been massive for Japan, because obviously, I think after 10 years of hard work on the ground with, the cookie bar and the online store and the wholesale channel, I think that definitely helped. Obviously, we've got some brand visibility in market, so that definitely helped with the launch into Costco. But Costco's also definitely enabled us to reach, a much wider consumer base that we hadn't touched previously, and also consider the demonstrations. So we were actually getting people tasting the product too, and that's potentially the best way to market anyway, to actually get your brand in front of people tasting it. So I actually I think I haven't done it recently, but I did some math when we were looking to set up the Costco demos, and I think I worked out that in the last 10 years, operating the store in Harajuku, we might have touched or infected or had, people, maybe close to 4 million people come across our brand or sample the product in some way, formal way, perhaps more of, lots being on gifted or whatever. But I also worked out that in the next 12 months, if we ran a demo program with Costco Japan, which we kind of had planned to do so, that actually we were going to potentially reach another 5 million in the next 12 months. So the scale. And then, of course, a lot of our consumer touching points to date have been focused around the store, which is in Tokyo. But obviously the Costco warehouses located all around the country give us an ability to really talk to consumers in other regions too. So yeah, it's been a very strong, and still is, and ongoing, massive beachhead for the brand in Japan. And so yeah, we're calling it the halo effect, and we're definitely sensing or feeling that halo effect, and it is helping with conversations through our wholesale channel, and our salespeople that are selling other products, Cookie Time branded products, through our wholesale channel.
Wow, so you're already seeing the on-flow of this deal with
Yeah,
Costco in other ways, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. It's difficult to measure,
Yeah.
But when we're having wholesale conversations, it's like, well, we're in Costco and, there's massive, wow,
Surely
that
that
pack's
ticks us
amazing.
your box. Yeah.
Fred.
Exactly. And they're
Absolutely.
like, well, can we have that? And we're like, well, no, you can't. You could have this. And, and then we've started them, we've got them on a journey. And yeah, it definitely helps. And it's ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, the store would obviously pick up a different group of customers, right? The cookie
Yes.
bar compared to Costco. Just and that
Yes.
massive exponential growth there on your predictions for the customer and getting them to come back.
Yes.
How do they come back? Do you just is it the demo that's enticing them? They get the taste, they buy a pack, and they're like, "That was yum. That was yum. I'm coming back." So it's just simple as that, or is there something else that
Coming
happens?
back to, you mean to Costco for
Yeah,
repeat
come out to
purchasing?
Costco. Oh, I know
Yeah.
Harajuku, they all come back. But for
Yeah.
Costco, what is it? Is it that connection? Is it as simple as that, or is there something else that brings them back to keep buying?
So obviously after the boom launch, sales have definitely pulled back a little, which we kind of expected. Also, we ran into hotter summer months, through June, July, August, where, products like ours or snack products in general tend to pull back. That is a trend. But there's certainly no doubt that people are repeating on it. And I think it's such a wow item. It's very cool. And, individually wrapped. So it's very easy to share the fun. So I think things like home parties or, visiting friends, and it feels like Costco was already a bit about that anyway. Like when in your neighborhood, if you go to Costco, you tell your neighbor, "Oh, I'm off to Costco. Do you want
Do you
something?"
need something? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
or even if they say no, you basically bought the thing anyway, and there's no way you can consume it. So because it's so bloody big, so you end up sharing it
Totally.
anyway.
You are sharing your spoils with your neighbors, your
You're
friends,
sharing.
yeah, or those 27
Yeah.
bread rolls,
There you
whatever it
go.
is.
So, maybe that's, our pack
Mm,
has
mm.
ticks that box too, big time.
Definitely.
Um,
I've bought your pack. I was made to buy your pack by my son because he was like,
oh,
mommy, cookie time. And
thank you,
then
Jane.
took it home, opened it up, and was like, thank God they're individually wrapped.
Yeah, yeah,
Because in
yeah.
Japan, you cannot hand out cookies that are not individually wrapped.
No,
Like, are you trying to poison me?
yeah.
So, yeah. And then they were gone in no time, and we didn't eat them. I was handing them out to people, giving them to the
Oh,
kids'
that's great
friends
to
when they
hear.
came by. Everybody was excited to get one. And some
That's great.
people said, oh, these. And they
Mm.
knew them. And I was like, awesome.
That's
So,
great to
yep.
hear.
Mm.
That's really good to hear. And we did think that a big part of early success in Costco and ongoing success is that we have been here 10 years. And I'm
Mm.
sure that has played a role.
Yep.
But funnily enough, the brand is resonating and sales are as strong in Taiwan, where we've recently launched, in China, where we've also recently launched. We launched in Korea in December, so we expect, similar trend line. So I think that, yes, no doubt that being up here for 10 years and having a store and having some brand visibility has helped, no doubt at all. But also I think the brand just everything about it and the product is resonating with the Costco consumer. So that's really exciting. Yeah.
So good. You mentioned future before that you were going to talk a little bit about that. Is there
Mm.
something you'd like to say there?
So part of our exports, we've got an export-led strategy within the business at the moment. So that's why you hear me talk about Taiwan and China
Mm,
and those
Korea.
Malaysia, all those
Mm,
other markets. And obviously Costco, we're feeling as a bit of a beachhead in some of those markets where it has a presence. It's not in all markets, but in those markets it's not in. We're kind of seeing Costco as a bit of a beachhead for our brand in those markets it's in. In those markets it's not, we're actually kind of sussing out or identifying similar players in those other markets that can play the role of the beachhead that kind of Costco is playing for us, and but say in the likes of Korea or in the likes of Taiwan. So again, there's other big box retailers in, say, for example, the Philippines, where we, building out a relationship that kind of mimics the Costco relationship. We'll look to lean on that or utilize that as a beachhead. And then, of course, we'll have a master distributor identified in that market, and they will then pick up the mainstream cookie time products and distribute them through their channels to supermarkets and convenience stores and, other kind of retail touch points in market.
Wow.
So that's part of that's kind of the export-led strategy. But then within Costco, of course, I looked at it, found not a GIF, but like a meme thing, the visual the other day that showed the Costco warehouse numbers across the world. And it's fun. It's very funny because if you find it, at the moment, we're playing basically in the bottom right-hand corner, which is New Zealand 1, China 4 stores, Australia 17 or 20 or something. And it's basically, we're right down in the bottom right-hand corner. And then there's this whole big thing that shows all the Costco warehouses around the world, Mexico and Canada and
Oh, wow. You've only
um,
scratched the surface
the US.
of
We're
the.
seriously, literally only scratching the surface.
Mm.
So,
Oof.
yeah, we're really excited about if the brand, we think, and looks like the brand resonating very strongly amongst the audience. And that's true in those markets we're entering, and likely in those other markets too that we haven't yet entered. So we definitely got them on our line of vision. So maybe
Nice.
a trial and somewhere in the Americas, maybe next year, just to test and see. But if we can crack that, then that would be massive.
It would be massive.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Goodness. Hey, you mentioned beachheads, and there'll be some people maybe listening who are not quite familiar with that. What does that mean?
Well, a lot of people might be more familiar with it. Well, those that know NZTE might, of course, I think that's where you're leading, maybe, with the Beachheads division, is it? Or part
We're
of
part of
part
NZT.
of New
Yeah.
Zealand Trade Enterprises set up, helping and assisting New Zealand manufacturers and brands to enter overseas markets. So yeah, we've had a bit to do with them over the years, but actually my reference to Beachhead was literally, when you're kind of landing and storming the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was our beachhead. Now, not in Japan because we've been up here for 10 years, but for example, in Taiwan, where we haven't had any business before, this is our launch strategy in Taiwan. So I'm referring to Costco in Taiwan, for example, as a beachhead.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
That's a great
Amazing.
explanation. Can I ask, who shouldn't go with Costco? Because what would not be a good fit to work with Costco if you're in New Zealand and you're thinking, I want to export my products? I'll go with Costco.
Given the scale and size, they are big enough and bold enough to dictate the terms. So if you're not as big and bold as them or can get into the ring and throw some punches, maybe you shouldn't start there because they do deal quite direct and it's quite straight. It's very straightforward once the business gets underway, but they're also, they're just big. They can throw you around or they can throw a hook or, an uppercut. And if you can't punch back or, you don't mind getting into a tangle with them,
You gotta be
then
tough. Yeah.
then maybe it's
Hold
not
your
for you.
ground. Yeah.
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 Mm.
And a lot of New Zealand manufacturers too that are not exporting much or a lot, tend to be, they might have capacity might have capacity glass ceilings or whatever it may be. It's probably not for them either. Like we were ready to rev up and we were ready to kind of scale. We've had to go through massive transformation in New Zealand to deliver on this promise to Costco, but we were ready for it. And if Costco shuts the door tomorrow, we're still ready for it. So you got to be ready for it. I think, it might fall into your lap and that might be nice and you might do some nice business with them. We're doing good, nice business, but we want their volume and we want their scale. So we're also getting into the ring as well. We need to be.
Love it. What a great analogies or metaphors you're
Yeah.
using there. Awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow. And great too, for Christchurch is that where the most of the manufacturing is still done for Cookie Time? So it's great for employment, for energizing the region and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the export-led strategy, and obviously Costco is a big part of that, has been the catalyst to basically expand our business in New Zealand significantly. So we've gone from 1 8-hour shift, which was more like a 10-hour shift, or a busy Saturday sometimes to keep up with demand, domestic and a little bit of export. has gone to now 3 shifts. So we're running 3 shifts. So we're basically 24/5, not 7, but 24/5.
Great. Wow.
Yeah. And so Costco's been a big part of that, but that also means there are expectations from the sales team to deliver opportunities now too, because the last thing we want is idle hands on the production line. So obviously the
Yeah.
Costco business is a big one for us, but then there's a lot of other kind of plays within the export agenda too that we're pursuing and pushing and focusing on.
What's your one gem then? The one gem that you can share after all these gems you've just shared with us
Um,
that would
just
sum
on,
it all up.
I mean, I mentioned before about, Japan and being up here 10 years, that certainly has opened doors. So yeah, I've mentioned patience before, Kath, and time and market. That definitely helps. But other markets open up pretty quick, obviously off the back of Costco. So again, that's the kind of the beachhead. Whilst we're doing that, we're also dealing with some markets that are more for us developed than others. At the moment, the Singapore Malaysian market is quite strong. We've got a very good distributor there. So we're supporting that to kind of, again, backfill, if you consider that Costco is kind of giving us all the volume, and at the top end, we don't want to leave, everything else in the middle. So it does feel a bit like we're in each of the markets. We've got these master distributors appointed or being appointed, and then on a bit of a mission to kind of backfill all that opportunity that sits below, the Costco style retailers. So we're busy on that. I'm conscious I still haven't given you a gem, Jane.
I'm thinking
Um,
what's coming up for me is that you've got this massive, massive client, right? Client, Costco, but you're also managing to supply and still look after the smaller end, the everyday customer coming in at Harajuku. So I feel one of your things is being, even though you may have a large customer, to always be thinking about all the other customers in your ecosystem and give them the love as well. I'm feeling that from you. You're looking over this whole spectrum of big to
yeah,
small, right?
that's good point, Kath. And like obviously I've just explained the export led strategy and my role within the export team, around, Singapore, Malaysia. But in Japan, that is specifically true. So in Japan, we do have sales people or person now on the ground, and in conjunction with myself and our small team, every day he's out selling. So yeah, in our mind, within the Japan strategy is obviously the Costco and all this sampling and demo that's happening and this halo effect I mentioned. But we have a pick and focus strategy with other clients within our wholesale business, of which it's grown over the last 3 to 4 years, and we have upwards of a dozen plus distributors that take our product to market through these retail chains, like you mentioned, Sejuishi and Kinokuniya and Kaldi, etc. So we do, and we're kind of conscious of the retail store, which is the antenna and the face of the brand, and the Costco, which is delivering all the volume and very lucky getting people sampling, but also very focused on delivering a great product and service to those mid-tier and beautiful retailers like Kaldi and Sony Plaza and Sejuishi, because we know that for brand building and for long-term longevity, I think in the Japanese market, we've also got to be really strong through the middle. And again, Costco has allowed us, its price point too, has allowed us to kind of enter that more mainstream market, which, let's be honest, Cookie Time has not been there to date. So that's a big thing. We've got a big foot in that now, and then we're kind of like playing around in the middle, and then of course at the top we have the antenna store of the brand, the face of the brand. Yeah, so it
Great.
does
Wow.
feel like we've got solid pieces of the puzzle on the board, and just looking after them and
Yeah.
slowly adding pieces of the puzzle to build the picture.
Did you
Mm.
envisage this? Like, when you said yes to Cookie Time back then, did you think
Maybe,
this was your future? This was what might happen? Was it in your
yeah.
crystal
Well, I
ball
mean, it's
there?
in our slogan. It does say a smile on every face, and so
There
it's
you
Indeed.
good
go.
to.
There you go.
We were
Well
chatting
done.
internally recently, and we're talking about global. We do have a global success story kind of mantra as well, which our export led strategy is looking to deliver on, and our business is all aligned on that. We are a global success story, and that is the picture we're building. So, when you say a smile on every face, that's not we're not excluding anyone in particular. So yeah, we better get that troll happening in America because
Yeah, can't wait to hear
because
that.
we
Gosh.
can't claim every face until we've at least popped up over there as well, and started the journey over there, in Europe. But at the moment there's no doubt it's step by step, and Japan is a big part of there's a bit of an Asia focus obviously at the moment, the APAC thing in Asia, but we're certainly not looking to stop there. We're very keen to be bigger, and
Amazing.
vision to be much bigger.
Yeah, you've also got like a whole rung of supermarkets left in Japan that below the Seijo Ishis and that you haven't touched
Exactly,
yet,
Jane.
right?
Exactly.
CGC, CGC.
GC, yeah. Okay,
Fight.
so
Yeah, put
there
them
is
on.
there is a yeah, and so obviously to touch those, Jane, it's really price, because
Right.
that's the mainstream, and also if you look at a lot of those stores, maybe around Fukushima that you would shop in,
Mm.
sometimes they do not have import, like an import. Typically, our product is an import item. So if a chain of stores does not have an import shelf,
Yeah.
then the buyer's not even looking. If they do,
Mm.
then obviously we're competing in that space. And then even if they
Mm.
do, that space is typically quite small,
It is.
relative to, the mainstream Japanese brands, the big Meiji and the Morinaga and the
So they
Buddha.
wouldn't put you on the shelf next to the other cookies because you're an import brand.
Yes,
No.
technically, and
Okay.
so they have planograms. Supermarkets will have a
Yeah.
planogram,
Mm.
and that is where you live. That is
Mm.
if you're from there and you're that product, you live there.
Hmm.
And then you've got to negotiate to basically rent that
Mm.
address.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so to do that, and the likes of the chains you're mentioning, a lot of it comes down to price point. They need to move a certain number of units, and in there traditionally they know exactly what sort of price point is required to move those units. And if you don't fit that model, then you've got a difficult conversation. So, at the moment, I mentioned the Costco and the antenna store, and then in the middle, at the moment, it's still there's a big chunk in the middle, like you say, and it still feels like we got a long way to go before we hit that, the big middle, that rich middle vein, if we can get the
Massive
price
middle.
point right.
Yeah.
But Costco is helping us kind of understand that better. Obviously, the
Mm.
Costco value, the product we have in there is of very good value. And traditionally, that hasn't been the case with the business in Japan. We've been at the other end, with the store and the branding. So we are figuring it out.
Awesome.
And we do have some strategic relationships up here in Japan that might help us deliver on that in the future, but it certainly hasn't gone unnoticed, and you were aware of it. And again, like I say, if
Cool.
we want to be on a smile on every face, need to be there as well.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any activities or promotions that you've got going that you'd like to share with us? Maybe I think you had a Jandals coupon code for the online store in the
Yeah. So
past, but is there something you can offer up for our listeners there?
yeah, I'm happy to do another coupon if you want to do this. We could do the same one too, if that's easier for you. I'd need to just chat to Rihanna to set up another coupon,
Yeah,
but we could certainly do something. And happy to do
sure.
the coupon if
Great.
that works. Or
That's lovely. Thank you. We'll hear back from you on that one. It's been
Check the
amazing.
show
Any last
notes. Yeah.
words? Yeah, any last words or any questions for us, Jason?
so I love talking about. We actually do too. Like the team, our owner, spends a lot of time in Japan and their family, and whilst they're here, and oftentimes they're not online, we often talk to people about Japan, our experience and business over here. So just really enjoy sharing, and happy to do so. And obviously, like when you're in the day to day, you're always looking inwards. And I think you don't often stop to appreciate what you have achieved. And I do. Obviously, you're aware too. We handle Tom and Luke up here in market, and that's also been a really successful product that was sold and marketed in Japan. And still see a big future for the Tom and Luke brand up here as well. And I remember walking around with them in 7-Eleven pre-COVID, I think, or post-COVID, just post-COVID maybe. And when you look on the shelf in a 7-Eleven, like what foreign brands do you see? You know, I think I
None.
mentioned this
Yeah.
before. None. So the fact that we've had Tom and Luke in 7-Eleven, and
Amazing.
also next year in February, we're rebooting Tom and Luke in 7-Eleven, the
Oh,
33-gram pack
fantastic.
through 4,000 stores. Yeah, so a kind of a smaller bunch of stores through the key metropolitan areas like the Tokyo and Nagoya down to Osaka. So we're hoping that actually, gives us the opportunity to bed it in and to actually, for it to stick. So, I think we're doing some neat stuff. And then obviously the one point I failed to mention, I probably mentioned in the last one, but a lot of the success we're having with Cookie Time now, obviously in Costco, but also through the wholesale channel, is to do with our long shelf life cookie. And prior to Costco, we never had it. So that is a critical thing.
There
A
you
critical box to
go.
tick for
A
success.
gem. There's the gem that
Yeah.
came out.
Well,
Long
and to be honest,
life
it's so
products.
it's so obvious that most exporters and New Zealand manufacturers will understand it.
Sure.
But, in saying that, we spent 10 years up here without it.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, I
Right.
mean we have a frozen supply chain which enables us to get away with a little bit. We return to ambient and back label, so we do get the full 90 days or the full 120 days that our products might have. But when you're doing that style of business too through the distribution, it becomes really difficult. Shelf life, and so having a long shelf life cookie has been critical, and that's a big part of the success, the Costco success. So yes, if you're an exporter, you need shelf life.
There you
For
are.
sure. For sure.
Wow, we are just so encouraged to hear this amazing story, Jason. You've done so well. You've landed on your feet. Proud of you to the end of
Mm.
the earth of what's going on with Cookie Time. We just love seeing every time I see Cookie Time, it does bring a smile to my face, literally.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Kath. And you've
Really,
been one
really
of that,
true.
yourself, and Jane too. Thank you for see your name pop up on our online store.
You might see it
Thank
again
you.
Yes. You see
very
us
But
at
thank you
the
shortly.
both
event.
for being, really supportive of our activities and brand. And actually, one other thing, can I say one other thing?
Of course.
There was a question actually you had about why have we been so successful, or maybe what are the tricks or whatever. But
Sure.
it's funny. Recently, we've been moving through export markets. It's everyone has, and Guy, our owner, has picked up on this, but everyone has a cookie time story. So, obviously growing up with it,
Yes.
through family or through friends, or there's some sort of something that you can remember. And
Yes.
then when I was in Singapore, we were filming actually the Cookie Muncher. There was a couple of Kiwis, Australians, and a group of Japanese. I spoke to the Japanese people, and they recognized Cookie Muncher. And they had a story about being to the Harajuku Cookie Bar, and then the Australians had a similar story as well about visiting New Zealand when they were younger and having relatives or being on the plane and getting a Cookie Time cookie. So I think it's all of those touch points. It's all of those touch points, and it's
Exactly.
not what one kind of marketing angle or piece of activity. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's been 40 hard years of good, smart entrepreneurship and just good people and making a great product and being true to who you are and the brand, and we've obviously got a
Lovely.
great fun character
Yeah.
who entertains. So it's all of
Oh,
those things.
you or the Cookie Muncher?
Cookie Muncher.
It's so true. The Cookie Time story for me is it got me through law school. We would come
Yeah.
out crawling out of some of those boring lectures and hit the cafe, and it was always a cookie time, always
Oh
Yeah.
my
followed by
God. If I
sausage
could
roll
get my
sometimes. But
mum,
that was just
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
story.
if
Got
I
me
could get
through
my
law
mum
school.
to buy Cookie Time,
That was it.
this is a
Gold,
happy
right?
memory, right?
Yeah.
Convincing your
And think
parents to
about,
buy you
that,
one. Yeah.
yeah, that Christmas cookies campaign that we run
Yes.
every year. I mean, that's
Yes.
massive,
Massive.
for again, branding, but also creating those stories, I
Mm.
took a photo when I was back years ago on my grandparents' house outside on the clothesline. She had an old bucket that was
Oh,
hanging there with pegs in it, and I think the bucket was like a 93 series Christmas cookie bucket or whatever, just
love
hanging
it.
on the clothesline. Still had, some branding touch points, whatever, but
Love
there's
it.
all of that, beautiful cookie time heritage that just still permeating, everywhere throughout New Zealand, and that
Mm.
Wow.
that
Even
helps.
as a pig bucket. Love it.
Pig bucket.
Or
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you, yeah. Anyone
I
doesn't
can
know what a
visualize
pig
it.
bucket is? We can tell you. But
There you go.
congratulations again, Jason, on just continuing to be such a successful jandal in Japan. Thanks for providing the updates on Costco. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And keep going. We're here for
Yeah.
you and loving it.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
much.
both for supporting and amplifying the story. Yeah, and again, not there's a network of people in New Zealand, of course, and Japan. None less than NZTE. They've been massive supporters and backers of our business up here, and our venture into other global markets. So need to say thank you, and we do often, but let me say publicly thank you too. So. Yeah, and to the network and just the team that surrounds us. It's a result of all of that. So thank you so much, you guys.
Wow, did we just get an MBA in how to get your product into Costco and what? Amazing.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Jason's amazing, right? I mean, I've known him for many years. You heard him call me Kath. So there's a certain group of people who know me as that, and Jason's one of those very special people. So
not many people get to call you Kath, do they? I haven't tried. Yeah.
Wow, what a story! Just to see that, and I love that he said that the putting a smile on every face, is actually now becoming a reality, a real reality. I'm sure it's on every face in New Zealand itself because everyone knows Cookie Time there. Wow, expanding in Asia like that and looking out to America and Japan being a beachhead, that is just so heartwarming.
Amazing.
Wow. But I love too, you sort of had so many hints there. It's just trying to download on all of those, right? The making sure you sort of check things like marketing budget. I thought that was quite sneaky in a way of, okay, it's all handled.
The whole process.
Part of it too.
May not be glaringly obvious. That's a good one to know, isn't it? A sort of
one. If you wanted to deal with Costco, you really need to be a company that is ready for some tough punches and I've sort of had this visual of being in a boxing ring. Yeah, being prepared for that. And if you're thrown out of the ring, what you're going to do. And what did he say? Capacity, glass ceilings, don't have any of those. That was awesome.
Isn't it great though that New Zealand has that one store where if you could get yourself in there and practice with that test run of being in the New Zealand Costco, that gives you such a great sort of springboard to the rest of the world once you've smoothed out all the kinks of being in that one. How fantastic.
Little sandpit, right? And then you can go to the beach and do one of those big sand castles, right? Get into New Zealand first as a test run.
Yeah, wow. Don't look overseas. Yeah, you can just do it at home, practice at home.
There's so much potential here. I just so exciting to hear that story. I'm going to go now and get online and order some product.
Yeah, I was like, I need some cookies after all of that.
Some now.
They don't stay around long. And everyone we give them to, their face literally lights up when you give them one. Here in Japan, people know it as a good cookie. And quite often I give them to some of the people that I meet often, and they'll be like, oh, yay, these again, right? Like, rather than, oh, these again. It's like, yay, these again. So they're thrilled to get them. So I can't wait for them to be available to more people here in Japan.
And I know at least one American friend has taken one or two back to America. So they're not first time in America. They have been there, at least through omiyage. Looking forward to hearing some more. That was a great episode. Thanks,
That was
Jane.
Fantastic. Do you think we should start our own product? I think we're just about ready now.
We're just about
learned all the things so far.
I think so. Almost that and our own little beachheads. I think something's got to come from this. Anyway.
The Jandals MBA.
Jandals MBA. You heard it here first. Okay. We've got many, many more coming up, haven't we, Jane?
We do. Keep listening. More Jandals coming to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Make sure you check out our guests' links in the show notes.
This podcast is brought to you today by Catherine O'Connell Law and Pod Launch with Jane. If you have a great story you think should be on the show, come and find us on LinkedIn or Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.
Mata ne!